Have you ever wondered why some names in the Bible are rarely spoken? Why certain stories seem to vanish from the pulpit, as though too sacred, or too scandalous, to mention? There are verses we quote often, heroes we celebrate boldly, and miracles we never grow tired of hearing. But there are also stories that sit in the shadows of Scripture, untouched, unspoken, and nearly erased by silence. One of those stories belongs to a woman named Tamar. Not Tamar the daughter of David, but Tamar the daughter-in-law of Judah. A name buried deep in the book of Genesis, waiting for someone brave enough to tell her truth. The Bible mentions her briefly, almost quietly. But behind those few verses lies a storm that exposes human hypocrisy, forgotten promises, and divine justice that refuses to stay silent. Her story doesn't make us comfortable, it confronts us. Because Tamar's life forces every believer to face a question we often avoid. What do you do when the people meant to protect you become the source of your pain? This is not a tale for soft faith or easy religion. It is a story about courage that bleeds, about a woman who refused to vanish when the system turned against her. It's about a God who sees what others overlook, who defends what others despise. And who dares to write redemption through scandal. The land of Canaan. Cinematic realism, reflective, emotional, reverent. Have you ever walked through a desert and wondered if God still remembers your footsteps? That was Canaan. A land of golden sands, wide skies, and quiet promises. A place where faith was spoken with lips but tested through pain. There, in the heart of that ancient dust, walked a young woman, Tamar. She wasn't just a name in a genealogy. She was a heartbeat in history. A daughter of hope in a world that gave women none. Tamar was given in marriage to Er, the eldest son of Judah. Yes, that Judah, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. The man whose name would later define an entire tribe. It seemed like the beginning of a blessed union. A promise of stability, family, and future. But the Bible records a single, haunting line. Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Genesis 38 verse 7. Just like that, Tamar's dreams ended. Her husband was gone. Her hope, buried under the weight of widowhood. And in her culture, a woman without a child was not merely alone, she was seen as cursed. Yet there was a law. A sacred order given through the ages. The law of the Levirate. If a man dies without a son, said the command, his brother must marry the widow, and raise up a name for the dead. Deuteronomy 25 verse 5. So Judah gave his second son, Onan, to Tamar. But Onan refused to fulfill his duty. He wanted the pleasure of the act, but not the purpose of it. And Scripture says, what he did displeased the Lord, therefore he slew him also. Another death. Another silence. And there stood Tamar again, alone, childless, accused by whispers she did not deserve. 2 sons gone, and 1 woman left behind. The village began to murmur. Maybe she's cursed. Maybe God is against her. But they were wrong. Because what men called a curse was about to become a covenant. Judah, afraid now, said to her, go back to your father's house. When my youngest son, Shelah, grows up, he will marry you. But in his heart, he feared losing another son. So Tamar went back home. Waiting, watching, believing. The days stretched into months. Months into years. And the years into silence. The spinning of her clay water jar marked time. The fading sun marked her patience. And every night her tears fell like prayers heaven kept counting. The narrator's voice deepens. Days became months. Months became years. And Judah forgot. But heaven did not. Because when men forget, God remembers. And when the promise sleeps, God wakes it in his time. Tamar's story was not over. It was only being written in the ink of waiting. God of remembrance, even when others forget, you do not forget me. I may wait, but I am not abandoned. I may be hidden, but I am not lost. Write my story in your timing. And like Tamar, let my waiting become my witness. 3. The law, the promise, and the delay, 1500 hours, 30:00. Tone. Emotional, slow build of disappointment. Deep, mournful, reflective, a pause before destiny. There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it waits. A sorrow that doesn't break things, it buries them. Tamar knew that kind of pain. She had obeyed every command, fulfilled every law. And yet her reward was silence. Judah had made a promise. When my youngest son, Shelah, becomes a man, he will be yours. A vow spoken in the name of duty, but forgotten in the comfort of fear. So Tamar returned to her father's house. Back to the familiar walls that once held her childhood laughter. Now echoing with the weight of waiting. The days came like waves. Each morning, she lifted her jar to the well, drawing water that reflected her own eyes. Eyes that carried both faith and fatigue. The seasons changed. The olive trees bloomed, withered, bloomed again. Shelah grew tall, became a man. And yet no messenger ever came from Judah's house. No ceremony. No wedding. No promise kept. The silence became its own kind of betrayal. The voice of the narrator slows, heavy with ache. Days became months. Months became years. And Judah forgot. Forgot the law. Forgot the promise. Forgot the woman who waited on his word. But heaven keeps records that men misplace. And the tears of the forgotten have their own language in God's throne room. When men forget, God remembers. In her quiet room, Tamar whispered prayers into the night. God of my fathers, if you see me, remember me. And though no answer came, something sacred stirred in the unseen. The slow unfolding of divine confrontation. Judah went on with his life. His herds multiplied, his barns filled. And his fears faded into comfort. But heaven had not moved on. Because you cannot break a promise made in God's presence. And expect the silence to last forever. Sometimes God lets time pass not because he is absent, but because he is preparing justice that speaks louder than words. Tamar's waiting was not wasted. It was the stage being built for revelation. A moment would soon come. When the woman the world forgot would force the powerful to face the truth. But for now, she waited. And heaven watched. Lord, teach me to trust you in the waiting. Even when promises seem delayed, I believe you are not done. Let my patience become my prophecy. And when men forget me, remind the world that you never will. 4. Judah's fear, Tamar's waiting, 30:00, 45:00. Moral reflection and sorrow. Deep, moral, reflective, silence as the echo of injustice. There are moments when justice sleeps. Not because God is blind, but because man has closed his eyes. Judah, once the voice of a tribe, now spoke only in whispers of fear. He remembered his two sons, Er and Onan, both gone. Both died after touching Tamar. And the thought that lingered in his heart was darker than any shadow. If Shelah marries her, will he die too? So Judah chose the path of silence. The comfort of delay. The cruelty of doing nothing. He looked at Tamar and saw not a woman, but a threat. He saw sorrow and called it a curse. He saw destiny and called it danger. So Shelah remained in his father's house. Safe, shielded, and stolen from the woman who waited in obedience. And the whispers began. Among the tents, they said. She brings death. They said. She is cursed. And though Tamar heard every word, She did not defend herself. Because sometimes, silence is not weakness, it is worship. She sat by her window as days passed like dust in the wind. Children played in the distance. Women fetched water. Men sang songs of harvest. But her world stood still. No child called her mother. No hand called her wife. No one remembered her name. Yet there, in her isolation, faith refused to die. Because true faith is not proven when prayers are answered. It's proven when heaven is silent. A woman without descendants was considered